Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from Jon and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. Jon, Pollock and Wai Ting with you on the final hours of January 2024.
That is correct.
What
Yes.
a month.
Yeah. I also hesitate to say that because who knows what February has in store.
I'm sure it'll be quiet.
We'll see.
Nothing happening month. It's a 29-day February this year.
You're right. Yeah, leap year.
I am under the impression, at least my parents had told me, that was my original due date as a child. I was expected for February 29th, and it was a leap year, the year I was born. So I would have been I would have had to hear that joke forever. Really glad I came a few days later. Anyway, on to the show we go. How are you doing?
Not bad. Yeah, doing all right. How about you?
I'm okay.
Just
Average.
okay. All right.
Fine. It's been a long week. It's been a long month.
Well, when has it ever been a short week? I guess for you.
I can't remember what happened 2 weeks ago, but I imagine it wasn't too crazy. That's what I'm thinking, off the top of my head.
All right.
We have a bit of news to get to before a Dynamite. We also have some house news to share with everyone. So
Huge announcement.
Massive,
Major.
Giant, big announcement. Bottom of your screen coming up. Wai Ting has a major announcement. But we want to alert people that we have a couple of shows to check out on the site if you would like to go. The annual MMA prediction show is now up and live. Myself and Ariel Helwani reuniting to continue the MMA prediction tradition as we go through the predictions made 1 year ago, and then a brand new list of likely or unlikely is constructed, as well as our bonus game at the end of the show called Confirm or Deny, where I read a bunch of headlines involving Ariel Helwani over the past year, and Ariel had to decipher if these were real or fake headlines.
What a return that you guys had. I mean, this was, I think, if anything, it showed us how many people like anticipate this show. You know, the number of times we've been asked where is the MMA prediction show, and you guys came back in a big way, not just with your predictions game, of course, but a tremendous discussion off the top about, you know, just I think everything. You know, what
we were recording on. That was our pre-show. That was before I hit the lot. That was on the show.
Sorry to break it to you. Absolutely. I mean, it felt almost like that personal, just a conversation between two friends. So I encourage everybody to listen to it.
Yes. Well, if you want to hear completely off the cuff, okay. We went into that. We're gonna do the show. Yes, and that was it. That was our prep. It's kind of like,
why did it take until January 30th for the MMA prediction show to take place?
In fairness, it was a very crazy month for me, but it is all explained in the first half hour. I was glad that we included that portion and then got into the regular MMA prediction show. But a lot of people look forward to this show. I heard from people at UFC 297. They're like, "Where's the prediction show?" It's like, oh, you know what? Am I really that notable a figure in the MMA space? I mean, let's be honest. We got.
You are now.
I guess so. I had to somehow get some attention. All right. Let's also mention the fact that this week we have got Rewind-A-Wai dropping on Thursday. We are going back to September the 3rd, 2001. It's in the midst of the invasion storyline involving the Alliance and the WWF. And the battleground is the Air Canada Center, where on this night, after a brand new pickup truck is purchased for Steve Austin, he is abducted and taken away, where Kurt Angle threatens to kill him around the outskirts of Toronto.
Was this the outskirts? I mean, I've always tried to do my best to identify where this place was, and in my mind, it was probably somewhere in the city, like maybe like the Don Valley or something.
That was, I assume this was like the Don River. Yes.
Yeah.
Quite the episode of Raw. I am not quite done this show yet, and we will share all of our thoughts on Thursday. It's a 2-hour Raw, so can't complain too much about it. Like 90 minutes of Raw when you cut out commercials.
Complain. I mean, I cherish it. You know, I love the invasion. Bring it on. I can't wait to talk about this.
Okay. Well, that's coming up on Thursday for all members at the Post Wrestling Cafe. And then Friday, it's the end of Echo.
Yes, it is. Yeah, the season finale of Echo on MCU later. So join Rich Fann, WH Park as they talk about that show, which I believe is released in its entirety already. So go and check it out, finish it, and listen to those guys talk about it, as well as the MC News, a weekly, or at least at this point, I guess regular news segment talking all about everything going on with Daredevil, Born Again. So that to me is as big of a hook as the review itself.
Okay, we'll check all of that out. And then Saturday, we have got Collision Course. We have got the NXT show coming up on Sunday night, Vengeance Day with Davey and Braden. So lots of great stuff to catch over the next couple of days. It is a brand new month. So for those that want to jump on board, postwrestlingcafe.com is your place to go. And for members at all levels, coming up in February, we're going to have another 3 editions of Rewind-A-Wai, beginning with the September 3rd, 2001 edition of Raw. And then later this month, we have got the Smashing Machine documentary on Mark Kerr and WrestleMania 24, featuring Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair, Floyd Mayweather against Big Show.
Yes.
Edge and Undertaker. Quite the WrestleMania.
It was a big one, of course, as well. Every Friday, Rewind-A-SmackDown. Every Saturday, Collision Course. You'll get to follow Bruce and Karen as they go through the rest of Okada's matches in New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's a huge month for New Japan.
Yeah, so they'll have a show after the Osaka card on the 11th, and after the they will be doing a show recapping both Sapporo shows coming up February 24th, that same weekend as Elimination Chamber. So there's going to be a lot of big New Japan shows. We will have coverage of those. And for Double Espresso members, audio updates that I shall be resuming. Cut me some slack the last week, where I've pretty much been recording something every day. But the audio updates will be populated once again. So there you have it. postwrestlingcafe.com. We appreciate everybody's support, and the whole schedule for the month will be up on Thursday. That's the day that comes after Wednesday, if I recall. Well, Wai, it is, as I mentioned, almost the end of January. You know what that means? It's the end of Kazuchika Okada's contract, it's already February 1st in Japan. So the man is a free agent.
He is. Okay, yeah, technically, yes. Yes, technically, yes. Mm-hmm.
And Pro Wrestling Tees had noted that they are taking down Okada's merchandise, but as it's been noted, this is more so a New Japan deal of selling New Japan merchandise of Okada's. Should not be reading into where he is going, although that's going to be the focus of things. Tony Khan has a major announcement coming up next week, so everyone's speculation will begin. Do you think Tony Khan knows what his major announcement is as we speak today, 7 days out?
I would have to think so.
Or is this like, does he have a drop-down menu that's like, if need be, it can be this. I have this on the back burner. It's like, it could be any of like 4 announcements at the moment.
I'm betting he knows what it is.
Well, we will find out next week. Do you have any like strong thoughts, Wai, on like where do you see him leaning?
I mean, the rumor seems to perhaps indicate more towards AEW than WWE. I would expect that.
What's more interesting to you? Is
WWE for sure?
Because it's more unknown, because it's
different matches. AEW is very much, I think, it's a product that's heavily influenced by New Japan. So I think a lot of the sort of match styles and even just like roster, it feels very similar to New Japan Pro Wrestling. Whereas at WWE is a total unknown, and I think the potential of an Okada, the sort of ceiling for success is higher.
When do you think that we will see Okada in wherever he lands? If it's AEW, would you anticipate that it would be as early as the next pay-per-view?
Yeah, I would. Mm-hmm. For WWE, probably after WrestleMania, would feel like a good time to debut him.
You have the potential that if in fact you do sign Okada, that Revolution show could have Sting's retirement, this title match with Joe, Ospreay, Okada. Like, this could be a gigantic show when it comes to new talent and this Sting retirement climax as well, that has been doing very well selling tickets, at least for that pay-per-view. I don't know if the road to, I just looking at like the ticket numbers and stuff, I really feel like this Sting retirement isn't being maximized in terms of the lead up for it. Like, these are all cities he's going to for the last time that you get to see him. And you see that there's so much interest in the match, of course, at the end of it, but I don't know if I'm quite feeling it for this lead up. They're building up next week pretty significant with the tag title match in Phoenix. Like, next week's show feels like a big show, but just in terms of a week to week thing, like, this is the last that they're going to have Sting featured in these cities. And it hasn't connected at the same level like this retirement match has in the same way.
Right. I guess it's not really like AEW or Tony Khan to announce matches, that far in advance, other than something as big as a retirement.
Still just locally promoting, like, see Sting for the last time, like merchandise in all of these cities. Like,
Well, do we know that it's the last time? I mean, he could still make appearances beyond his last match.
Well, I think it's going to, I think you could get away with doing like the farewell tour. I mean, just, Sting's farewell. I mean, it's not like this guy's going to be making towns and stuff on the regular once he's done here. I mean, you could see him in some kind of ambassador role, but I mean, this is kind of the farewell. Anyway, we move on. Not a ton of news. We went through quite a bit of it with Brandon earlier today, but something we have not talked about is Friday Night SmackDown. The voices of SmackDown will now be Corey Graves and Wade Barrett together. It sounds like Corey Graves will be assigned the play-by-play duties with Wade Barrett. Don't hate it.
I reserve judgment to hear, how Graves sounds.
I think Graves is going to be fine in play-by-play. As we mentioned, the fact that he kind of assumed that role a lot with Kevin Patrick when you're watching things. And I'm sure for him, I'm sure he's looking for a challenge on commentary and doing something out of his comfort zone. It's not often that we see this transition. I'm at least curious to see it. WWE is not shy about shaking up its commentary team. So worst case, it doesn't work. And they do need a play-by-play man for the future. I don't know if Vic Joseph is going to be the guy that's earmarked. If you're Vic Joseph, maybe you're getting a little antsy about, okay, what do we need to do for me to get this position, as opposed to all like Graves, we'll try him out there. It's like, is Joseph just glued to that NXT seat for perpetuity?
I almost feel like if I'm Vic Joseph, I'm happy to stay at NXT, because I think the sooner you get called up to the main roster, the sooner you might be out the door completely if you don't, for whatever reason, satisfy their wants. I mean, I have to think that I feel like they would have used him by now, instead of a Kevin Patrick, if they actually were that high up on him. So, I mean, I don't know. It's really hard to say, but I think I'm with you. I think, Graves will perhaps live up to the task. I mean, he already is somebody who seems to know every move. He seems to be, an encyclopedia of wrestling knowledge in and outside of the WWE. So, I'm at least optimistic that he at least has the base, certainly, to provide that role. I'm curious to see like how much of his sort of like more heel leaning character he retains, and how much more of a neutral stance he takes, because that's sort of traditionally demanded of that role.
Great point. Yeah, I mean, you kind of don't want sort of like the heel antics in your play-by-play commentator, and it's sort of reductive when you've got Wade Barrett there for that specific. Like, I would say neither go so far in the heel direction, but they do sort of like play that end of things. So that would be interesting to see if they do change that at all. The chemistry could be completely off between these two, but I'm curious to see it. I'm interested to see this experiment play out on Friday and in the ensuing weeks, to see if this works, or it's just a rough fit and it's just trying to put a square peg in a round hole. But nonetheless, we will hear their voices on Friday night. Couple ratings notes. Collision on Saturday night. This was the show going up against the Royal Rumble, and what we got was a not Not a great number for Collision. 300,000 viewers, down 32% this week. 0.06 in the demo, which was down 39%. This included women 18 to 49, almost dropping in half. 18 to 34, down 23%. Although women 18 to 34, up from the previous week.
All right.
Hard to explain, but that was it. This
Yuji Nagata.
Yuji Nagata, big among women 18 to 34.
Must be.
They wanted some Blue Justice on Saturday night instead of the Rumble. So this would be the lowest Collision on a Saturday night airing. There was one Friday episode in November that was technically lower, but this, regardless of nights, the lowest 18 to 49 number ever. We knew this was going to get destroyed, and it did. And I guess my question to you is, Wai, if this was a 300,000.06 against the Royal Rumble, night one of WrestleMania, like what is the absolute lowest that this can go? Do you see it being significantly more for a WrestleMania, or do you see it being kind of this level that this is an AEW loyalist that is going to watch? And I can't wait to see what Tony has for that Saturday night.
I feel like it'll be at about this level. Like if you're somebody who is at least an AEW fan who might be curious about the WWE, you're probably watching 2/3 shows out of the year, and that would be the Rumble and both nights of WrestleMania. So to me, the Rumble almost feels just as important as a Mania if you're an AEW fan, I think. So I don't anticipate it bottoming out that much more. But we shall see, I guess. What do you think?
I think it'll be lower than this, but I don't think it's going to go crazy lower than this. I feel this is pretty low, like a 0.06. Like that's, man, it's hard to imagine Collision doing lower than that. Like I just, when Collision launched, even against a Rumble, I couldn't have fathomed it being that low. But I mean,
we have to take also into account just the sort of like constant erosion, that exists regardless of competition for Collision as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors that are going into it. Raw on Monday did 1,909,000 viewers and a 0.61 for the show following the Rumble that had the commercial-free first hour, which topped 2 million viewers, opening up with CM Punk's announcement and confrontation with Drew McIntyre. But the peak was for the Seth Rollins-Cody Rhodes segment. And there was a drop in the third hour, but still it was, almost 1.7 million viewers in hour number 3. Interesting, though, Canada, they did this insane number last week and then kind of fell back to normal range this week. So there you go. Canada getting back to normal, where it's the bizarro world compared to the US numbers. And NXT doing 648,000 viewers, very similar to what they did last week, difference of 1% and a 0.18 in the demo, which actually was their lowest 18 to 49 number since late December, down 7% from last week. And those are your numbers to store in your head and have as easy ammunition for your next online argument.
Are you anticipating maybe a year from now not having at least one set of those numbers?
Well, we're not going to have Raw numbers, presumably, unless Nielsen starts to track them at a more significant rate as we're getting now. But we'll still get all AEW numbers. We'll still get NXT, and we'll still get SmackDown. Canadian numbers, though, probably going to the wayside outside of AEW. I mean, that whole package is going to be on Netflix. So anyone at Netflix, John at postwrestling.com, you can reach out. Always happy to hear from you. So there you have it. Will you miss any ratings data?
A bit here and there. I mean, if it affects the quarter hours at all, certainly. I think those are very interesting.
I think they're very important. I think people. Yeah. I think people. It's not so much the data that they detest. It's
the reaction.
It's the reaction, and I think you should separate those two, because I don't think we should be advocating for less information. But nonetheless, it's what you do with them. Okay, well, I need to take a breather. So, Wai, take it over.
Well, as we mentioned, everybody, we have a big announcement that concerns the post-wrestling universe, and we'll shake it to its core. And I'm here to deliver it right now. So everybody, stand by. Here we are. The post-wrestling store has moved to Chopped Tees. Yes.
What?
Everybody. Did you know this, John? I probably should have told you before.
Finding out for the first time here. I didn't know. Got a pack.
No one really tells you anything these days. Yes.
Take all this down.
We have moved to Chop Tees. All your favorite Post t-shirts and hats are now available at the same low prices, but for the very first time, we are expanding our catalog. Yes. Now, all of our original t-shirt designs are also available on long sleeve tees, women's tees, baseball tees, ringer tees, sweatshirts, and yes, John, finally, hoodies.
Oh man, is that our shared brain on a hoodie?
I think it is. I am also proud to announce that we are finally releasing new merchandise for MCU later, the Nubian Wrestling Advocates, and we've even brought back the original 4 Pillars Long and Winding Royal Road design, the very controversial 4 Pillars Long and Winding Royal Road design. But if hats are more your thing, you can now pick up our latest addition to our very popular lineup of snapbacks and dad caps with the Post Wrestling Trucker Cap. As I always say, John, we do it for the truckers. You know, hours and hours of content to keep you guys company. Now, whether or not you're a trucker, you can put our logo on your trucker cap. Chop Tees utilizes a global fulfillment network, meaning that when you buy your favorite Post Wrestling merch, it'll be printed and shipped from a fulfillment center as close to your address as possible, which not only reduces carbon emissions, but means your order is delivered super fast. Just check out the estimated delivery indicator on each product page to see how quick you can expect your purchase. And for the first time, if you live in the US, Canada, Australia, the UK, and most EU countries, shipping is completely free. So before, John, with our store, you would have to pay $15 to have a shirt and a hat shipped outside of the US. But with Chop Tees, shipping is completely free. And if you're in one of these free shipping countries that are listed here, you'll pay in your local currency, meaning that you'll know exactly how much you'll be spending without extra credit card fees. So pay no shipping fees, pay no handling fees, pay no international transaction fees, and get most items delivered in a week. Simply go to chop-tees.com/postwrestling or click on the store button at postwrestling.com and support your favorite Post Wrestling, Poison Rana, and WrestleNomics contributors while getting great value on your purchase. And before we get out of here, I just wanted to perhaps browse, John, maybe get some of your reaction.
I would love to see these.
I want to just give a special shout out here to Dickie Bird, who, doesn't even really want to be mentioned like in something like this, but he's put in incredibly endless amount of work on the site, and it's his baby. And we saw the great success that our friends at Poison Rana have had with him. So I hit him up and I was like, hey, Dickie, come on, let us in here. And he very graciously did. So go to chopped-tees.com and you can browse everything within the Post Wrestling section here. Not only do we have baseball tees for, every shirt that we're currently selling.
Wow. I've seen none of these.
Yeah, this is brand new. It just launched today. Are you kidding me? Look at this brand new Nubian Wrestling Advocates shirt.
Can you enlarge?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Look at these.
Yeah. I'm just, again, everything goes directly to the people who host these podcasts. So if you are a fan of any of these shows, and if you want to support the podcasters, all the profits for these shirts go directly to them. There's the original Pillars design. Look at this MCU later red hoodie. I think it's gorgeous. So
man, that's going to be seen at the BMV, I'm sure. Do you know what? Yeah. Do you know what the message will be when they inevitably sell out the Nubian Wrestling Advocates T-shirt?
What's that, John?
Straight out of cotton.
Yes, very good. Thank you. Yeah, so go and check it out, everybody. Just simply do some browsing. As we mentioned, it's free shipping on all orders. So pretty much like outside of your local taxes, the price that you see advertised is what you'll be paying. Dickie has really just kind of like put the customer first when it comes to all of this stuff. He puts a lot of care into the creation of this site. So go browse it, browse WrestleNomics section, browse, the Poison Rana section, which has a ton of tees. So thank you very much to Chop-Tees for welcoming Post Wrestling to their store.
Chop-tees.com/Post Wrestling. Go join it and support your favorite members of the Post Wrestling community. I won't be I will defer and assume that they'll be going Wai's direction.
I don't think so, John. If we should really get a John Pollock specific shirt there. There's so many ideas over the past week that I think we can come up with you for.
Well, over time, we will. I'm sure we'll be further populating the wonderful store. So thank you to. I was really the brainchild behind this whole extension, wasn't I?
Thank you, John, as always. Yes,
did a lot of the heavy lifting for this one, but great stuff. On to Dynamite. We are going to be going to the UNO Lakefront Arena in New Orleans, Louisiana, site of tonight's Dynamite, where WrestleTix noting 1,990 tickets out. So much like Savannah last week, not a very stellar number. Although I would say they were, in particular, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but the most over guy on this show was Rob Van Dam. And yes, he was the pseudo surprise. But man, he was like head and shoulders, like the biggest reaction on a show that had Moxley, that had Jeff Hardy, that had Hangman Page. I mean, Rob Van Dam, and that match, that was the most lively the crowd was for that hardcore match. And they were smart to book it as a hardcore match.
They were smart to book it as a surprise. I mean, it was a heavily telegraphed surprise on the level of, CM Punk in the first dance. But still, like it allowed the crowd to at least anticipate it. And once they heard Pantera, they treated the man like a superstar. And of course, it helped that he wrestled a great match too. So I think the surprise helped him. I sensed like good reactions though for a lot of people on the show.
We started off with Jon Moxley and Jeff Hardy, and they focused on the CMLL talent in the crowd with Hechicero, who's taking on Bryan Danielson on Collision Saturday, Mystico, Volador Jr., and Máscara Dorada, who would get further involved later on. But we start things off. They note that next week, folks, it's been too long. A major announcement to be made by Tony Khan next week. So that's the main event next week. Moxley is just dominating this match. He runs Hardy shoulder into the post, and then at one point, Hardy sends Moxley over the barricade, and he knocks into the CMLL guys. Mystico was having none of this, and Hardy whips a chair at Moxley, goes for the poetry in motion off the steps, but gets caught with a fist from Jon Moxley. Go through the break, and we come back from the picture-in-picture, and there is Jon Moxley putting a pen through Jeff Hardy's earlobe. I had forgotten about how grotesque this man's usage of his ears were in WWE. And I guess Jon Moxley has just been waiting for this chance to work this man's earlobes.
I had too forgotten about the magic and the incredible flexibility of Jeff Hardy's earlobes. I thought he had said that he would be done with these, like he was kind of done with these spots after, like, I believe using it on a chain to a ladder at one point and almost having his earlobe ripped off. But I guess Penn and Jon Moxley, he will maybe Jon Moxley really begged him in the back, hey, can I use your earlobe? And it made this match, I think, it took it to a next level, I would say.
Wow, it was quite the image to come back on. Moxley ends up taking a twist of fate, and then he's on the edge of the apron, and Hardy follows with a whisper in the wind. Moxley counters a twist of fate, landing his own cutter, and then after Hardy hits more twist of fates, he climbs to the top, misses the swanton, and this allows Moxley to take the back rear naked choke with the hooks in, trapping the arm and getting the submission. They went 15 minutes and 4 seconds, and I thought this was one of like Jeff Hardy's better performances that I've seen in the longest time. I mean, he, to me, really had his working boots on tonight with someone at Moxley's level. They went 15 minutes. This was one of his more significant matches, I would say, since his comeback as well.
I think it was the earlobe that made the big difference, John, No, I mean, I kid, but like, I think it took somebody with the intensity of a Jon Moxley and maybe a spot like, the pen in the earlobe spot to really kind of take this to another level of like sympathy drawing for Jeff Hardy. I thought this was like Mox at nearly his most vicious, and it's so interesting how he continues to be able to switch back and forth between wrestling as a babyface and wrestling as a heel. But because he's even like as a heel so dominant and so cool, it just ends up making him a bigger babyface. So I really find it fascinating how he, especially among all the Blackpool Combat Club guys, have really kind of tapped into that. And I thought Jeff Hardy was utilized to his best effect here. Again, driving up the sympathy, getting beaten up by Mox, serving for some really great comebacks. So I thought it totally worked.
Maybe he needed to just tap into the fountain of youth, and he threw on WWF Raw from September 3rd, 2001. Man, I was in the main event with Chris Jericho. I gotta go out there.
We have several September 9th, 2001.
Oh, dude, when you go through this AEW, this Raw show, I mean, it has a very much an AEW flavor to it. In certain parts, yes. So then we go, Hardy is applauding Moxley, and Moxley comes over to offer his hand, but Hardy blows him off and just walks off, and they can't believe that Jeff Hardy would do this. So we are moving over to the heel turn, but then as he's like walking up the ramp, he's he's putting his hands together to like the kids. It seems like he's like, forgive me. It's just this guy.
It might not necessarily be heel turn, but just maybe more Jeff Hardy with a bit of an edge.
Oh, okay. He's in AEW as well.
That
interaction on that show in 2001.
I'm sure that interaction will be coming shortly as well. Yes.
So Moxley, he's just gotten insulted here by Jeff Hardy, and then the CMLL guys all jump the barricade, entering the ring with Moxley, and they all start fighting. And the announcers explain the BCC are not here tonight, which I always applaud those little notifications. And so security runs in, they're attacked, and then Jon Moxley, who's like, dude, I really need to be a bit more social and develop some more friends, because here to run to his aid are, I'm not kidding, Matt Sydal, Christopher Daniels, Angelo Parker, and Matt Menard, who run down. And here are the four horsemen down here to save Jon Moxley. And this will be our Rampage match for the CMLL guys against
New Orleans Combat Club.
The New Orleans Combat Club, yes. Yeah, the standbys.
I mean, really, what this was it almost felt like they were framing the CMLL sort of stable as an invasion, not unlike September 3rd, 2001 here, almost an alliance of luchadors here. But
man, do you think Hechicero is going to get a new truck purchased by? Maybe that's Tony Khan's big announcement next week. He's purchased a truck.
Yeah, how tall are the bridges in New Orleans? I guess. Anyway, but I like this idea, and that's why I think it took like sort of your I hate to say it, but like AEW job squad to come out to defend the honor of AEW against these guys. So I'm very curious to see where they go forward with it. Of course, later on they would announce a BCC versus CMLL trios match, which I think is a hell of a way to introduce these luchadors to put them against these like high level main eventers.
I like that they're really going hard with the CMLL guys. I mean, go with like a flavor that is something unique to yourself, like Lucha Stars. That is something that, WWE is really not going that direction with like authentic luchadors in terms and ones with names attached to them that are coming in that you can do something with, and establishing them as a serious act right out of the gate, and not just they're just here to have great undercard matches, but have no weight behind them. I mean, they're putting them with a top group and making them look competitive right out of the gate here with Moxley. So I thought it was a good introduction for them, and I already look forward to the reactions when they announce Danielson and Hechicero today. Who? What's the story?
If they had built this as a dream match, maybe I could have understood some of that sort of criticism. But I mean, this just sounds like a great introduction for a new wrestler on AEW TV.
Next up, we go to our Hangman Page and Toa Liona match, with this being the first dealer's choice match. And I thought Toa worked really well in this match, in terms of this was a big match for him in a singles outing here. Hangman this guy just does not have like bad television matches. He
doesn't have bad matches, period.
Yeah, that's I was going to expand, but yes. Page cannot knock him off the apron after a series of springboard clotheslines. So they did a big deal until he could finally get Toa off of his feet. Toa then pounces him into the rope, and they explain if there weren't ropes there, Hangman would be in the fourth row.
Well, a bit of an exaggeration, but you never know.
Thank God there was ropes there. So the match continues, and after the pounce, we get a running hip attack. Toa then misses a senton on the edge, and it's Page now with the suicide dive. Toa still doesn't go down, and then finally hits him with a high cross in the ring, getting a 2 count. Inside out lariat, struggles to get him up for the Deadeye, but after he hits it, Toa just pops up and headbutts him, and we get a discus clothesline for a near fall. Toa misses a moonsault off the apron, crashes on the floor, opening things up for Hangman to hit the Orihara. And then as he goes for the buckshot, Toa ducks it at first, pop-up Samoan, but as he goes to hit the Samoan drop, Hangman turns it into a crucifix for the pin in 12 minutes and 35 seconds. So good match, and I thought that they got something here out of Toa before beating him.
Very much so, yeah. always like AEW's roster is so stacked that you might have somebody who like a Toa Liona who like is this good, but is so untapped because we've only seen him in the multi-man matches, and so you put him into a singles capacity that's featured on Dynamite, and um you'll have like a lot of very impressive matches that, you know, might ultimately just kind of be stepping stones for guys that are being focused on these rankings, which we will go to. They were just announced, everybody. So, but yeah, very successful showcase for Toa Liona, and a very good David Goliath type of victory for Adam Page. They're obvious, like sort of like Umaga, like archetypal comparisons for Toa Liona, and he certainly has that intensity, very exciting offense. And I thought this was the type of match that like gave you glimpses of maybe the sort of you know, future singles run you might see with him.
Then we see the rankings, as they mentioned, are going to be released tonight, so we can go through those rankings if there's anything.
You want to do it now?
Sure, why not?
All right. Yeah, just released from Tony Khan here. The return of the AEW rankings for January 31st, 2024. And we have, well, interesting to see how they list it here, because it's strictly under the men here. We've got your list of champions: Samoa Joe as your world champion, Christian Cage as your TNT champion, international champion is Orange Cassidy, and the Continental Crown champion is Eddie Kingston. And your contenders are, in first place, Swerve Strickland; in second place, Hangman Adam Page; followed by Adam Copeland; followed by Jon Moxley; and then followed by Roderick Strong. So those are your top five in the men's division. In the women's,
with Copeland doing his deal that he could get his title match with Christian, but he's opting to work his way up. But now he's ranked third, so I mean, I guess he can just keep working his way up.
Yeah,
that's the story. He's working his way up to earn a rematch for the title.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Okay. Well, at this rate, I think he could probably get a match with Joe pretty quickly.
I think he's kind of overshooting his coverage here. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. In the women, of course, we have Timeless Toni Storm and Julia Hart as your world and TBS champions. And the number one contender currently is Deonna Purrazzo, followed by Thunder Rosa, followed by Hikaru Shida, followed by Sky Blue, and rounding out the top five, Mariah May. I feel like I'm like Tarzan Dan or something, you know, going through the countdown here. In our tag team division, led by Ricky Starks and Big Bill as your champions, we have Sting and Darby Allin, obviously, as your number one contenders, followed by Silver and Reynolds in second place, followed by Danielson, Claudio Castagnoli in third.
I'm sure there's some logic to this, but like you just look at the John Silver and Alex Reynolds have the leg up on Bryan Danielson and Claudio Castagnoli.
I imagine it's a lot of activity on like ROH or Rampage.
Should ROH count for this? Separate company.
That's a great question, actually. Yeah, it's a very interesting.
Tony Khan's words, not mine. Different company.
Fourth place, Private Party. Fifth place, Orange Cassidy and Trent Beretta. Yeah, it's a good. I'm sure chat room will maybe give us some of those answers. Oh. And then finally, we have our trios division with the Acclaimed and Daddy Ass as your champions, and the number one contenders, interestingly, Bullet Club Gold. So I guess they're not necessarily recognizing ROH title wins, but they have to recognize like ROH matches, because like I feel like there are ROH title defenses on AEW, therefore shouldn't that count towards those rankings? Okay. The Hardys and Mark Briscoe are in second place, and then we have the Dark Order fourth place, FTR and Daniel Garcia, and then the House of Black are in fifth. Okay. So those are the rankings. Yeah. I mean, ultimately what matters is just, you know, who the number one contenders are. Everybody else, they could just kind of change up as they go along.
All right. Are they going to be putting these out? What when did they say they do these? Every month?
I don't think they said. Did they? That when they would update these? I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, can look forward to this. Maybe a weekly segment. Matt and Nick Jackson arrive earlier today, and a PA hands them a format sheet and refers to him as Matt and Nick. So he's fined $500 because their given names are Nicholas Lee and Matthew Ron John.
Mm-hmm. Ron John, yeah, I think that's a shoot.
Yeah, it's his real middle name.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Love that, like, he gets something like, let's go with Ron John and Nicholas Lee.
Well, they have like 5 siblings, I think, or something crazy like that. So I'm sure they all have interesting middle names.
Ron John. Wardlow with the Undisputed Kingdom against Komander. So first sign of bad things to come. We have Dasha introducing him as Mr. Wardlow before correcting herself. Mr. Mayhem Wardlow. For the purposes of this show, he will be Mr. Wardlow from now on. Okay.
Well, my question is when
Reservoir Dogs.
When did this guy become Mr. Mayhem?
He's been Mr. Mayhem. They have called
since when?
Yes. It's not a pronounced nickname, but it's been there for.
How does someone justify Mr. Mayhem? You know, like what?
There might be a Mrs. Mayhem out there. We don't know.
He got married and took her name.
Private life alone. He tries to keep that on the Wardlow.
Yes.
Adam Cole is on commentary, and Wardlow is just throwing Komander around. He launches him with this F5, which was not identified as such. I don't know if that term is going to be used in wrestling vernacular for the time being.
Right. Yeah. An F10. What?
That's what Brian Cage called his. So
yeah, the same move.
Yeah, this could be the F15, whatever you want to call it. And then this guy starts posing and just watching himself on the screen and goes for a power bomb on the floor, but Komander sends him into the steps and then kicks the rope into the groin. And the crowd does start to get behind Komander, does the rope walk drop kick, and Adam Cole starts to get worried. Wardlow is the one that should have got worried because Komander goes to the top rope for this Phoenix splash. And he comes down and, dude, I gasped. I thought he killed this guy. He comes down like it looked to be right on his throat. I was like, this guy either like crushed his larynx or maybe an orbital bone. I didn't know what it was, but it looked terrible. And Wardlow is immediately grabbing his throat. It was like, holy Christ. And he manages to kick out of this, gets up and delivers a spinning slam. And you're just watching him. It's like, okay, maybe he is okay. And he drapes Komander on the top rope. He does his finish where he drills him into the knee and then lifts him up for the power bomb, and his knee's giving out, so he can't even power bomb him correctly. Totally falls apart at the end. So God knows how much could be damaged with this guy. But he was limping noticeably after this match in the ring.
Well, not only that, the man was like, clearly not happy after this match.
He shouldn't have been. Like that sucked. Like that Phoenix splash was just brutal, man. Like that.
Well, yeah. And like even off screen, in the closing angle, the man was like, like banging at the steps. Like he knew he did something or something happened here that was going to take him out of the storyline. So again, we're doing this show right afterwards. We don't really sort of have any sort of indication of how significant the injury is, but I mean, judging by him, like it seemed to indicate he felt like he could be out for a while after something like this.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully he gets checked out, but it was like
chat room is telling me that he tweeted that he's okay, so maybe that's already an update. So yeah. I'll find it.
I mean, with all of these things, I mean, it's. You do want to like wait some time before you know truly the extent of it. I mean, he could wake up tomorrow and you don't quite know where things are.
So here's the tweet. A normal, this is from @RealWardlow, which I think he really should change at this point to @Mr. Wardlow. He says, a normal man's knee would be ruined. I'm no normal man. I'm still coming for the heavyweight title, and there's nothing and no one that can stop me. Knee is just fine. With a wolf emoji.
Well, hopefully he escaped injury because there was a. Yeah, it was a mess of a match by the end of this thing. Went 5.5 minutes, and afterwards they grab Komander, and Strong says he's going to pay the price when Cassidy and the Best Friends run down, and Undisputed Kingdom just bail and wheel Adam Cole away. Beyond the Wardlow stuff, I do feel this Undisputed Kingdom group, like they are missing a spark of some sort. Like Adam Cole, I understand he's injured, but it's not even as though he's got this big ominous heel presence attached to him. It feels closer to like the comedic stuff we were seeing before, but now they're just all together and they kind of feel directionless without Max in the mix on top of it. Like here they are, they're feuding with the Best Friends. And your main guy can't wrestle, but I don't know. It's been a very underwhelming group, and it was only introduced a month ago, like we're talking about. It feels as though it just hasn't picked up.
So, again, like maybe they were forced into revealing themselves a bit early due to whatever reason. Who knows, like, what the initial timeline for all of this was prior to Cole's injury. but they have not managed to, I think, keep up whatever momentum that they were able to build with that reveal. And I think it required more significant, I don't know, beat downs or like intensity of action, from the group. And they've really just kind of felt like a mid-card team that are really they're really doing everything by the book here, like they're just trying to rack up wins in order to get your title shots, when in the past they were attacking people behind in a pretty gruesome manner. So what happened in that intensity?
Maybe it's
this was before the rankings, so now they got Roderick Strong at 5th place. All right, so
well, he's already got his title shot locked up for a month from now.
Well, I mean, we're talking about the world title, aren't we?
No.
I guess Wardlow, is going to have to be a bit more active.
Shivani did a sit-down interview with Ricky Starks, Big Bill, Sting, and Darby Allin, and there's no physicality that they agree. They agreed no physicality per Wai's wishes. There were highlights of Revolution 2021 with Darby calling out Starks for not respecting Sting and using him as a stepping stone. And Stark says that he's going to, quote, get his lick back on Sting from that Revolution 2021 loss. And you're not even going to make it to your retirement match. And then Starks looks at Darby, and I have no respect for you. Bill says they're being overlooked, and you guys represent all the others who have overlooked us. Sting says he used to admire Ricky Starks because he was the first one to get in his face and talk smack, but you need to earn respect. And Bill, I've fought a lot of big men, but I don't know if you're a killer like some of them. And Darby then explains that Starks, you blame everyone else, but you need to blame yourself. And for that, Starks tosses water in his face. But Darby says, I made a promise. And no physicality here. And Sting just tells him that in Phoenix, Darby's going to hit you. And I will too.
Mm-hmm. Good segment. Good intensity established here, especially between Darby and Starks. And I thought Sting and Bill sounded pretty good as well. So. Are you expecting title change next week?
The only swerve I could see is the Bucks somehow, we'll get into it with the segment later, but where they get in Darby's face and they leave it with the line of, we'll have to get their attention somehow else. And if you have either the Bucks costing Sting and Darby and you just keep it with Starks and Bill, but since they've made such a big deal out of it, the Bucks winning the tag titles, and that's Sting and Darby. They get the tag titles in the retirement match. That's the big ending to this.
Interesting. And I guess the rankings would support it in some way.
Well, the Bucks got to get some wins. They're not even in the top 10 or the top 5, are they?
That is true. I don't think so.
Got to rake up some wins. They better. But I guess they are also they're allowed to manipulate the rankings, aren't they? That's kind of the gimmick.
Heel heat. Jumping in front of the line.
Heat, yes.
Huh.
They're going to ignore that. Their characters will explain that we're also booking for money drawing programs as well. We got to create interest, and therefore you go with stars, even if they're coming off a loss.
I mean, there is a legitimate way that they can just rack up those wins. They can book themselves against a bunch of different jobbers and just,
they could do that. Yes,
multiple matches a night, even.
Yes. Kyle Fletcher and Chris Jericho are next. And Callis and Hobbs are out with Fletcher. And right away, Kyle Fletcher hits a Michinoku driver. Worth noting, I mean, in terms of if you're focusing heavily on the Jericho reactions, I mean, it felt like a pretty normal reaction at this point.
I would say so. I mean, maybe the Judas sing-along isn't as loud as it was pre everything. But I mean, by the end of the match, this was a very sort of baby face match for
no
Jericho.
boos. I couldn't hear any boos during the body of the match.
Yeah. And I really don't expect them going forward. And it really is, unfortunately, at an inconclusive and almost awkward state, at everything that sort of was brought up between Jericho and Nick Hausman and Kylie Ray. It doesn't seem like that's that sort of story, or at least we're not learning any new information, and we won't be. And I think there's probably enough sentiment out there that from people who feel like Jericho was unfairly criticized or brought up in that case as well. I'm not saying that whether or not that's the case, but I'm saying there's a large contingent of people that feel that way. And as a result, I don't expect his sort of live reactions to be impacted that much one way or another.
Both men do the 10 punches in the corner. Jericho's ends with a Frankensteiner and then gets tripped by Callis as Hobbs distracts the referee, which kind of feels like it should have been the other way around. They go through picture in picture. Fletcher hits a brainbuster. Fletcher worked really hard here. Callis then distracts, and now it's Hobbs striking Jericho from the floor. Jericho recovers, manages the walls, and Kyle fights the rope. I did feel there was like some space in the middle here where some of this, it just felt like it was going on, but it started like intense with the Michinoku driver spot. And I would say like the final few minutes, they really did go hard, both of them here. Jericho is down, lands the code breaker out of nowhere, but it's a delayed cover for a 2 count. And then Kyle goes for a superplex and turns it into an attempted brainbuster on the buckle. I had to like rewind this to see like what exactly was the intention here.
So he has done this move before. Like
it has, but yeah. Jericho's like a big dude, man. And this was
it looked devastating.
And had incredible trust in Kyle Fletcher.
Oh God, it looked devastating. And maybe, you know, for all we know, maybe it felt perfectly fine. But yeah, this was the intended move, which he's done in the past. Like this sort of like corkscrew type of like brainbuster DDT with the impact that looks like it's all right on the top turnbuckle.
So Kyle Fletcher then, after a super kick, ducks a Judas effect attempt and lands a roundhouse kick, sending Jericho to the floor. And as Kyle goes for a suicide dive, he's caught mid-dive with the Judas effect. I thought that looked great. And then Jericho sends Hobbs into the steps, rolls Fletcher in, and hits a flying Judas effect off the top with Callis too late to break up the cover. So Chris Jericho, your new ROH television champion.
Oh,
no, non-title.
Is he in the rankings?
The ROH rankings have not been released yet, but maybe this will propel him up there. I listen, I thought these two worked like, again, I thought there was like a little like downtime in the middle of this, but I thought both guys worked pretty hard in this match. And I did like the Judas effect variations at the end, especially that suicide dive one.
Yeah. I thought it was a very good match, actually. I thought Kyle Fletcher looked excellent in here. You don't really like, I guess I don't fully realize how tall he is until he's standing next to somebody, you know, who I already consider a heavyweight, and I think we all do, in a Chris Jericho, but like the man towers over a Chris Jericho. I thought Fletcher's like intensity in his moveset all looked really good, and I thought the Callis family was also pretty well utilized here to cut Jericho off and to put him into a very sympathetic position throughout the match. It got the crowd fully behind him by the end, and some very impressive, you know, Judas effects to really lead us to the finish as well.
And Konosuke Takeshita just walked out and signaled next week it's one-on-one in Phoenix. Deonna Purrazzo video, for those out there that weren't sure what the tattoos meant, this was a whole video explaining what the tattoos meant.
Really well produced video that, again, just kind of continues to not just tell you what the tattoos meant. We knew from the last week that they share a tattoo. We can infer a lot of significance, but they actually kind of spelled it out for us and showed us photographic proof that these two knew each other.
Wrestlers coming up always take photos of your friends. You never know when you'll need them for angles. Okay,
always get tattoos on a whim with a random, you know, wrestler that you
make sure it's a talented wrestler that you can use to like do, like, don't just get a tattoo with someone that you know is going to be, you know, at the, you know, at a certain level their whole life. Then the Bang Bang Scissor Gang walks out. Dude, I'm going to say it every time. I love this entrance. I just think it's like it's such an awesome looking entrance. And now you add the Acclaimed coming out afterwards, and I think they've got like a good thing going here. They all 6 are out. And Max Caster says how they've dominated the trios division for years. They brought out the cardboard cutout of Jay. Then they throw it away and instead call for the juice board. Crowd chants for juice board. And then Billy just says that he's got 2 words for you, but it's a new era and it's guns up as they all scissored. So absolutely no point to this segment other than coming out to just do their shtick, but the crowd loved it. And it was just a segment to just, hey, look at us and our cardboard cutout.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose like they wanted to remind everybody, or at least formally introduce Rock Card Juice Board to a TV audience, because they did it in an online segment, and I suppose maybe they wanted to recognize that. Beyond that, I think it's just maybe helpful to continue to have these sort of establishers, because I do think they work in elevating the status of the group. And all you have to do is just put them out there and show this crowd reaction to this like scissoring and gun banging, and like they're arguably more over after just even a scene like this than not doing anything at all. So they're, to me, like, this is very clearly pointing towards an eventual feud, but I think we're all just enjoying this ride so much in a similar way to how we enjoyed Adam Cole and MJF, in their come up as well.
Natalya and Tegan Nox.
Maybe less so. Maybe they need a hand sign. Maybe that's the missing element.
If you were a pro wrestler, would you be having the time of your life if you were in this group with your dad?
Yes, this? Of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, my dad?
Your dad.
Yeah, I'd have to imagine my dad scissor banging with fingers.
Scissor me, Daddy Ting.
And that's not really something I care to imagine.
Okay.
I'm sure he'd have fun. Yeah.
Here are our lineups.
Can you imagine if your dad grew up telling everybody to suck it?
Yeah, that's
my
dad. He used to be a smoking gun, and now he's
yes.
I'm
sure they've had very interesting lives.
What a run,
Austin.
So Rampage on Friday. Top Flight against Private Party. Big Bill and Ricky Starks against our number 2 contenders, John Silver and Alex Reynolds, in a eliminator bout. Queen Aminata versus Willow Nightingale, and then Mystico, Volador Jr., Moscar Dorada, and Hechicero against Matt Menard, Angelo Parker, Christopher Daniels, and Matt Sydal all together. And we will hear from the Best Friends. So Friday night, there you go.
The New Orleans Combat Club.
And Collision, Danielson, Hechicero, Eddie Kingston against Brian Keith are the 2 matches announced so far. Deonna Purrazzo against Taya Valkyrie. Tony Storm is on commentary. And Purrazzo runs Taya into the steps and then starts making out with Johnny TV as we go to picture-in-picture. Purrazzo sends her into the apron with a Russian leg sweep. And then in the ring, Taya stops the Venus de Milo. And as Deonna hits a baseball slide dropkick, walks up to Tony Storm. And as they cut to Tony, they go to black and white and then back to color. Just a nightmare, I think, here for this production team to try and keep consistent.
I almost feel like they're getting a little too obsessed with it. Like I don't think it needs to be done every time you cut to Tony Storm. It's a nice effect, like when they're doing it, but I almost feel like it's bordering on like a little bit of overusage.
So some of Storm's highlights were after thinking Tony Schiavone got into such great shape when Ian Riccaboni was there in place of him. Now she was back to being concerned when Tony was back. And then after she is sent out of her seat, she just yells, "Someone has pissed in my seat," and just screamed as we cut to Deonna, and she hits a pump kick on Taya and then sits on her back and hyperextends both arms for the submission. I'll assume there was a submission by Taya because they cut away for the ending as the match ended. So a little too concerned about Tony Storm than the actual ending of the match. But great submission finish here. I mean, I don't know how many opponents you can get such dexterity here as Taya did. But man, that looks absolutely painful.
Yeah, that looks like something maybe a chiropractor would do to you if you had serious scoliosis, perhaps. I thought this match was a lot of fun. I mean, I think Taya really did her job well here, and basically serving up a big opponent for Deonna to kind of showcase herself with. And I if there's anything that you could say about the rankings is that they provided consistency for somebody that's coming up for a title challenge like a Deonna Purrazzo, who I think they've done a very good job of keeping in focus on Dynamite specifically, giving her pretty much weekly wins here. And Deonna has really come through both on the microphone as well as in the ring, and continuing to, I think, show very impressive performances with flashy, cool submission moves like this one. So I think this feud is building up pretty well.
Renee is with Darby, and she has to ask him, tell us about your admiration for the Young Bucks. So Renee is following the orders of the producers of this segment, Matthew and Nicholas. So the Bucks walk into the shot and state that Darby, you're a hot young star, just like us, but refer to Sting as a blood-sucking leech who's taking money from the rest of us, and suggest that the three of them be a trio, and note that they went through a goth phase in high school. And Darby just says, all I care about are the AEW tag titles. And so the Bucks say that they will get his attention in another way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not loving this quite yet, John. You know,
No.
like I feel like on the Bucks on their own, when they're doing this shtick, I kind of enjoy. But when they're placed with what I think are a pretty like realistic, well-established group in Sting and Darby Allin that don't really have any sort of like campy shenanigans, it kind of takes me out of it. You know, like the Bucks are, again, this is very much like a BTE type of gimmick where they're almost like very intentionally campy with it. Again, I'm not fully into perhaps those two sort of tones mixing, but I mean, they do have time. And if the Bucks are promising that they'll make what Darby and Sting notice in a certain way, maybe they'll get serious and do something incredibly dastardly that might, you know, turn me around.
And then the final match, Joe comes out for commentary, and it is Swerve Strickland in the ring as Pantera hits, and this place goes nuts for Rob Van Dam. I was not expecting him to be this popular to this crowd, but he came out, massive chant. Again, I thought he was easily the most over person on this show. And Hangman is...
I really do think, like, I mean, beyond Rob Van Dam looking great, and really, I think, you know, he's a name that, like, when used sort of sparingly, can provide great value, you know, as a special attraction. But it tells you, I think, the value of having, to me, in my opinion, Pantera, you know, and Tony Khan paying for like licensed music, because I think that to me is as big of a draw as seeing Rob Van Dam himself.
Yeah, it's different than coming out to a One of a Kind.
Or his TNA theme.
Oh,
do you
yeah,
remember?
where he just screams at the beginning. God, yes. But you're right, like, sparingly, like, the thing with Van Dam is that, like, he's still working like it's 1998 for him.
Mhm.
He is not, like, changing up anything, and that's you can get by at, like, 42 still playing that character when you're a great athlete, and he is a phenomenal athlete, but he is now 53, and the expectation is still to do all the like 2001 RVD spots,
and he's pulling it off pretty well, you know, like, not only I think the moves themselves, but like the man looks like RVD from, you know, September 3rd, 2001. So yeah, like, he, again, I like him as used sparingly, like in a Minoru Suzuki type of role. If we had him every single week, I almost kind of get the sense we wouldn't appreciate him as much.
So Hangman appears on the screen and notes that you also get to pick the type of match for dealer's choice, and makes it a hardcore match as Swerve turns around and gets a chair whipped at him by Van Dam. And the crowd's into this. There's ECW chants, and he hits the spinning leg drop off the apron onto Swerve. I mean, this was just amazing that he hit it to such a precision. And they go through the picture-in-picture. Swerve stops a monkey flip, power bombing Rob onto the chair. Van Dam then climbs to the top and gets shoved by Brian Cage, who's run down. So Hook comes down and levels Cage with these chair shots. And they do bring up Van Dam and Hook teaming up previously last year. Swerve then avoids the rolling thunder, hits a rolling flatliner, and then Van Dam is seated on the floor in the chair and takes the Swerve stomp off the apron. Rob throws a chair at Swerve on the turnbuckle, and then as he absorbs the chair, Swerve crashes through the table that had been set up on the floor. Place goes wild for that. And then Van Dam comes off the top, misses Swerve, landing on the chair with the frog splash, and takes a house call with a chair for a 2 count. And then as Rob is knocked off the turnbuckle, he's seated. He puts up the middle fingers as Swerve comes off with the Swerve stomp and pins Van Dam in 14 minutes and 32 seconds. This one definitely over-delivered for me in terms of a match that we pretty much knew what it was going in. Number one, I didn't see this like headlining the show. But man, they worked really hard for these 14 and a half minutes, and they played to Rob's strengths, and he definitely showed up for this one. You're muted.
Sorry about that. I wasn't expecting the hardcore stipulation, and I think both saving. So we all expected Rob Van Dam, but to save the hardcore stipulation as a surprise, I thought was incredibly effective here, and I think only heightened this crowd's interest in this match by revealing it this late. And it allowed Rob Van Dam to do all of his classic ECW spots. And again, Van Dam is able to almost pull off like all of his classic moves like just as well as he did in the past. And I think he more than lived up to the expectations of an AEW main event. And again, Swerve is somebody who seems to have great chemistry with anybody at this point, and again, it could be as a babyface or it could be as a heel. And it just worked. So yeah, a good main event for AEW.
And Paige comes down. Both of them are now 4-0 to start the year and calls Swerve an evil bastard and assumes that when the rankings come out that they'll be on top, but says, I'm never going to let you become champion because I am the next world champion. Swerve points out, I've beaten you twice. You have to realize you just can't beat me. And Paige's counter to that is that it took all of the Mogul Embassy for you to beat me those times, but when it counts, you know that you just can't lace my boots. And that was enough for Swerve to say, okay, let's throw those 2 matches out. You get one more match, but then we're really done. And boom, Tony Khan has made the match. He had Photoshop up and ready to go for this outcome. And this is going to happen next week on the show with the winner getting the shot at Samoa Joe at Revolution. So, I mean, would lean you towards the idea of a singles match at Revolution unless they do the time limit next week, which is you can't totally throw out as a possibility.
Well, I mean, it does state winner gets a shot at the World Championship. So would it have to be a scenario like, would a draw create 2 winners or 2 losers? I suppose that would be Joe's argument.
We'd have to go to the championship committee.
I think it's possible that they'll do a singles match here, at Revolution.
I think Hangman's going to win this one. Like, I don't see Swerve winning a third one.
But they'll have to come up with a creative way, I suppose, to protect Swerve. I think it creates obviously a big edition of Dynamite for next week.
This lineup is nuts for next week of what they've announced. They've got Swerve and Hangman, the tag match with Sting and Darby going for the tag titles, Jericho and Takeshita, and then the BCC against the CMLL team.
It feels like a real effort to make almost like a mini pay-per-view level for an edition of Dynamite. And I think at this point into this year, Dynamite kind of needs that shot in the arm in this sort of like statement making edition of Dynamite. And by putting essentially like the final conclusion of like one of the best sort of like, 2 matches that they've had over the past year on TV, assures that hopefully there'll be a lot of elevated interest for Dynamite next week.
And the main event is Tony Khan's announcement on top of that they have next week. So that's in Phoenix. So yeah, a pretty loaded up show for next week. It's funny in going through the review. I think that I took a lot of things I enjoyed on Dynamite, but on like going into this show, I was very underwhelmed with this lineup for Dynamite and even watching it. And this is a growing criticism is just how tiered everybody is on the AEW roster. That I don't think anyone would have thought any of these outcomes were in doubt in terms of who's getting pushed, who is going to win. And when you take that out, you're just looking strictly at match quality. And, you got the expected outcomes in all of these. I would say Swerve and Van Dam was greatly above my expectations. Hangman and Toa Liona, I enjoyed. I enjoyed Moxley and Jeff Hardy. Deonna and Taya Valkyrie. Really the only like match that was a mess on this was Wardlow and Komander, but I'm just interested to see if this was like you just looked on paper and this did not look like a big Dynamite. And I can certainly see that being a criticism of the show just in terms of where they were with star power and with the lineup going into it.
Yeah. So like 99.9% of the time, I think we come out of Dynamite enjoying them, maybe enjoying them a whole lot, but whether or not we anticipate them is sort of a different question. And I would say this week and maybe last week, they felt like they were weeks where I think we're just kind of seeing matches to build up to something like next week, where they're really putting an effort into giving you like, again, a mini pay-per-view level type of show.
And I thought they did a great job of building up next week. Like this did feel almost like a go home show, which sometimes you mortgage one week for the next. And, next week certainly does have that that greater anticipation.
Yeah, so maybe, we just kind of chalk up this week as one of those, like, you're burning one to gain one, and
With Rob Van Dam.
that is correct. Very nice. Yes.
Rob Van Dam was like the surprise of this show, because I just didn't really give that much thought. That I just thought that'd be thrown into the middle of the show, and it's a Swerve win. But yeah, I mean, it was your main event again. He got a phenomenal reaction, but I think an RVD, you do want to probably space out those appearances. A couple dealers' choices a year for him.
I would say like this match was, I think, received much better than the Minoru Suzuki match, which I thought was fine, but like maybe there isn't as much spectacle or maybe even novelty attached to a Minoru Suzuki appearance these days. And Rob Van Dam obviously is a lot more sort of popular on this side of the world.
Yuji Nagata got all the shine.
He did. I suppose, I mean, not a ton of buzz about that one either. But it was an interesting sort of novelty for an edition of Collision that few people were going to watch live.
All right. Well, everybody, that's going to bring an end to Rewind-A-Dynamite as we
as we have some feedback, or at least in the form of a super chat here, or at least just a super sticker of support here from Aaron Carnival, who sends $5. Thank you very much for the support, Aaron. And if you guys aren't watching live and still want to support the show anyway, chopped-tees.com/postwrestling. This is your way here to not just support Post, but to support our entire network of podcasts. WrestleNomics is up there. Poison Rana is up there. So support your favorite podcast.
And on that note, earlier today on Pollock and Thurston, we had Michael McCann on the show. He is a lawyer and a sports legal expert over at Sportico. He's written about the McMahon lawsuit, so a lot of the legal implications were covered with Michael in that interview today. As well, Brandon and I kind of did a rewind over the past week and looking at some of the coverage of the Vince McMahon lawsuit and going back to some past comments that had been made when Vince McMahon first came back in January of last year. So a lot of focus on the Vince McMahon suit on today's edition of Pollock and Thurston that you can find up on the Post YouTube channel or subscribing to Post Wrestling on your podcast app of choice. So there you go. We are back again on Thursday with Rewind-A-Wai covering Raw from September of 2001. That is up for all members at postwrestlingcafe.com. That will be up on Thursday. And then Echo, the season finale, coming out Friday with Rich Fann and WH Park. We'll see. Will they be in their brand new MCU later threads?
Well, it's really fast shipping, but I don't think it's that fast.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they're recording tomorrow night.
Oh, so. Okay. Express. Okay. That's it for us. For Wai Ting, I am John Pollock, and thank you for tuning in to Rewind-A-Dynamite.